Then cleaning them off when you're done so it doesn't grow bacteria. A hassle on top of a hassle. Try Swiffer Wet Jet. With Swiffer Wet Jet, you start with a fresh pad and cleaning solution every time. And when you're done, you just toss the pad. Swiffer Wet Jet. The faster, easier, cleaner way to clean your floors.
Tonight's matchup is me versus an ugly fender bender. If I can eke out a win, it would be a miracle, baby.
Mr. Vitale, it wouldn't be a miracle because Geico gives you a team of experts to help manage your claim.
It's gonna be a nail-biter.
Nope. The Geico team is there for you 24/7.
Now that's a dipsy-do dunkaroo of a claims team. Geico is awesome, baby, with a capital A.
Geico. Great service without all the drama.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 23rd, 2021. Ronald Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we've made it to Friday, almost to Saturday, where it's going to be time to relax.
Yeah.
Through this 1 week here, 1 week left in April, Charlton.
Yep.
Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They make sure that America can make it through every week.
We make it through every week because of our great people helping everybody get through. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic. He'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I'm learning to pause even better. My doctor says when you pause, breathe deeply. So I'm going to try to pause and breathe deeply, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, as we think about our veterans in this country on a daily basis, as they go through a tiresome and gruesome ordeal, Charlton, of suffering mentally, emotionally, and financially. Unfortunately, Charlton, over 24 a day have turned to suicide, a horrific number that this country has not paid enough attention to. When we talk about pandemic, that is a pandemic amongst our veterans in this country. They've served their time to protect us. We have to do more as a country to protect them. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but our veterans still struggle every day. There is no vaccine on the horizon to stop suicide in America, where it has gone into the streets of mainstream America also, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is something that our country needs to pay more assertive attention to, the suicide pandemic in America, Charlton.
Big C, very well said. I think it is helping. I'm hearing more and more people give out that same message, and I really do appreciate that you brought it to us about 2 years ago, and it's all fair and level war. Everybody knows that we got to do whatever we can to make life great for ourselves and our veterans. All you got to do is pick up the phone and call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home with weekly TV, on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run King Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country to help put people back to work, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams are doing it. watch TV, and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. I also want to say thank you, Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight, for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world, as we want to make sure that people can rise and shine. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Man, I know you said you're looking forward to the weekend, Big C, and I'm looking forward to every day as well as the weekend. But there's some good old boys down in Florida. I guess they want to be in front of 15,000 fans. You know, the UFC is different. It's a different kind of party. In front of 15,000 fans. It's going to be indoor, not an outdoor arena like a baseball stadium. But UFC 261, you have the defending champion Cameron Usman. Big C's 18-1, and maybe the best fighter ever in the UFC. He's going to fight Jorge Masvidal, who's 35-14, in the beautiful city of Jacksonville. But do you really think we need to go from 0 fans to 15,000 in one day, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Florida's a state wide open. I mean, it comes down to the intelligence or lack of intelligence of a fan. Do you want to put yourself in harm's way and potential risk of being in a COVID-19 environment? It's gotten to the point in America where people have become numb to the situation of COVID-19. And if you're willing to take that health risk, go for it.
Yeah, just really in the last couple of months, Dana White had all of his fighters going over to Fight Island over there in Dubai, Big C. And they brag about how they had such success because they didn't have too many COVID issues where people were trying to put the fight on pause, and because they did such a great job testing people. So how do you take that? And even with that, Big C, they still had a couple of fighters that they had to put on pause because of a positive COVID test. So if you have an audience where there's really no people that haven't been given the vaccine, and you still had a couple of COVID tests, what's the justification coming back to the States in front of 15,000 people, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you just stated that they didn't have total success over in Dubai.
That's right.
Who knows what the COVID rate is in Dubai? We don't get the ratings from over there, how many people are positive, and what the death rate is. You got a country that keeps all their secrets going on over there. Dana White was willing to operate in that. You already stated that they had fighters put on pause because they tested positive for COVID-19.
Yeah.
When money's involved, the person who is not fighting doesn't give a damn.
Yeah.
And that's Dana White. If people get it, they get it. He's not at risk being in the ring, being knocked out, passing passages back and forth between each other, Charlton. So just like with the fighters and the fans, if you're willing to take that health risk, we know that COVID-19 has not gone away in America, then that's the chance that you take as a fool. Yeah,
there are a lot of guys who are in UFC fighters, they don't make the same kind of money that boxers make, Big C. I know you were talking about, you were at the Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard fight when I think they fought in Montreal back in the day. And you talk about $1 million purses, that's way back in the day, Big C. Most people think that the fight world is like Conor McGregor when he got beaten up by the fighter Floyd Money Mayweather, Big C. Not everybody's making several $1 million in a fight. So oftentimes, if you're telling these guys, some of them, they're lucky to get a sponsor, and if they get a sponsor and get knocked out in one fight, sometimes that sponsor goes away, and they got to go out and find other work, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's the risk that you take, Charlton, in any profession, whether you're playing a team sport or an individual sport. There's only going to be one champion at a time in any sport. So, I mean, you go out there and you do your best. But, this is something that sprung up from backyards, the MMA fighting. Yeah. And has reached the level that it has. Charlton, Dana White is getting ultimately rich out of it.
Yeah.
Those fighters are just wanting a bite at the apple.
Well, let me ask you a thought then. And I don't know if you have any say-so on it, but you probably do. Remember how Don King, and again, I've heard some fighters that fought for Don King, and they were just saying that things didn't end up the way they thought they were going to end up, Big C, if that makes sense to you. And then there is also, Bob Arum. There's some fighters that of course, people can say something negative about you if you're not there to defend yourself. Dana White seems to have avoided some of that criticism with a kind of an MMA, I don't care what you think mentality. But do you think he's got more of a pass as a promoter than the Don King or Bob Arum from back in the day? Big C, your thoughts?
Do you think that the MMA fighters are as intelligent as the boxers, Charlton? Those guys negotiated their first what they were going to get.
Yeah.
When you were an elite boxer, Charlton, regardless of the weight division, you weren't going out there and fighting for less than a few $1 million.
Yeah.
You know, the guys in the MMA will go out there and fight for a bus ticket.
Yeah, I think you're right. And sometimes people are just put in dangerous situations where they feel that's the only way out. But we wish them nothing but the best. It's UFC 261. Cameron Usman's won 17 straight, Big C. And that good old boy is the toughest guy going. He is down in Florida. You got to look out for some shenanigans and make sure you bring your own Gatorade. Would that be good advice you give to the Nigerian guy, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is going to be a battle. The last time they fought, Masvidal took the fight on a 6-day notice. He never got a chance to prepare for it, really, Charlton. So this will be an ultimate battle tonight, you know, between the two.
Yeah, it's gonna go on. I believe it's Saturday night, but it should be a great fight. No matter who comes out on top, I still believe that Usman, unless there's some shenanigans, is going to prevail in that fight. But it's all fair in love and war. I want to touch on black history, Big C. The first black people across the sports continue to make history while knocking down doors and achieving roles that were previously thought to be unobtainable, Big C. Like, guess who's coming to dinner, if that makes sense to you? Vanderbilt athletic director Candace Lee is forging a path for African-American women to lead in the SEC, where there are still no black football coaches in the SEC. I believe they have a conference of 14 teams. Think about it, Big C. What does that mean for the SEC that an African-American woman is kind of a trailblazer, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you think about that anywhere across the country to have an African-American woman in leadership roles. This is a woman that's in charge of all athletic departments at the Vanderbilt University, one of the highest academic universities in the country, Charlton. So not only is she tasked with keeping that athletic program afloat, but maintaining those high academic standards amongst the student athletes.
That's a very good statement. Now, when you think about that, Big C, when people think about Candace Lee, you have Vice President Kamala Harris likes to repeat a phrase that her mother once told her as she was climbing the ranks of power in California politics. You may be the first to do many things, but make sure you're not the last. How does that resonate, in your opinion, with other women who are also trying to be the first, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, if we've looked at the height and growth of black women in America, Charlton, over the last 100 years in this country, and we see that there's been no hill too high to climb.
Yep.
When you think about the accomplishments, now that we're in a multimedia age and that their exploits can be explained and seen on a daily basis, where 100 years ago when a black woman made inroads into society and success in the corporate world, Charlton, no one really knew about it. I mean, you think about the movie Hidden Figures, where 3 black women were really prominent on the first Mercury astronauts being able to circle the Earth and enter back into the zero gravity of the Earth, Charlton, without losing their lives. The black women were responsible for that. But it still took some 60 years for America to know that black women were responsible for saving the lives of those white men.
Isn't that amazing? Now they're producing oxygen on Mars. It's all fair in love and war, Big C. So it's a way that Candace Lee, Candace Lee is well aware of. Her story, a lot of women should be well aware of it, Big C. A humble trailblazer named athletic director at Vanderbilt University last May. After serving as interim athletic director for the previous 3 months, she became just the second black woman to lead a Power 5 athletic department and the first in the history of the SEC, which is rampant with good old boys. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about the SEC being a trailblazer, Charlton, appointing a woman to be the most dominant, powerful person on campus. You think about, people talk about the presidents of universities, the deans of universities.
Yep.
No, the most powerful people on any university campus, Charlton, anywhere in the United States, is in the athletic department.
Yeah.
Generally a football or basketball coach, depending on your ranking across the country, Charlton. But to have an athletic director who is African-American, who is in charge of hiring these people and firing these people, that right there is power.
I remember Mike Garrett when he was doing this thing at USC when they were winning national championships. And as oftentimes men have been in there many, many moons before women get that chance. So it's really humbling, she mentioned, for her that it feels humble to hear people refer to her as a trailblazer, or whatever word you use. That's humbling, Lee said. But she likes to think more of herself, that it makes her think about the responsibility that comes along with it, Big C. And you think about all the people that came before her and that created the opportunities. Some of them that she knows and some of them she's met, and probably most of them that she doesn't know. And at the same time sacrificed and paved the way so that she could have the opportunity that she has right now, Big C. I think it's just, when I think about it myself, the focus on doing a good job is important. And by the virtue of the hard work, that it creates opportunities for other people. As the NCAA Division I schools go, Vanderbilt really is an outlier, like the great Malcolm Gladwell's book, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when we think about black people ascending to top positions, Charlton, they're always working under a microscope.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to fail. They always have to be the best of the best.
The best of the best.
They don't get the recognition, but they always are ascending higher than everybody else. When you think about programs all over the country, they've been led by white athletic directors, Charlton. And when they fail, no one says anything about it. But when a black fails, they'll always say, well, we shouldn't have took that chance.
Yeah, we tried that already, and let's see if we have wait another 10 years. Good old boys, sometimes they just get passed on from one school to another. But when you think about at least the third consecutive African-American athletic director the Commodores have had, and it's the #1 academic school in the SEC too, Big C, following her mentor David Williams II, and then Malcolm Turner. Lee was associate athletic director for both of those men, Big C. If she attends a conference with an athletics director from the 64 other Power 5 schools, you got to think about what it means. She'd be just one of 5 women on the call or in the entire room. Only one of them, Virginia's Carla Williams, would have any idea what it's truly like for Lee as an African-American woman to navigate that space. And Lee will always be an African-American woman. And just like Vice President Kamala Harris said when her mother told her, you might be one of the first, but you won't be the last. And it's good that people can open those doors when they get in, especially women of color. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when I think about Lee and I think about the young lady there at the University of Virginia, Charlton, we're talking about states that operated under Jim Crow.
That's right.
There were slave states. But those states were the first to open their doors to women's success when you think about athletic departments. You can look all around the country in other 48 states. They have not been as prescient and open-minded to offer those opportunities to African-American women.
You know, I want to, and I may not have all my facts right, but I heard Stanford football coach David Shaw today on the radio in the Bay Area. And I might be wrong about my facts, but Stanford University is the #1 academic school on the West Coast, and #1, of course, in the Pac-12 Conference, Big C. David Shaw, African-American coach. Tyrone Willingham was an African-American coach. And also, if I don't, yeah, Tyrone Willingham was one. And then they also have David Shaw. There's another one I might be missing. I want to say Dennis Green was also on that staff down at Stanford. I don't believe the #1 school considered the school that carries a banner for the Pac-12 is USC. I don't believe they've ever had an African-American football coach. Stanford's had at least 3. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, they've had 3 African-American coaches, also, but what I'm saying is that having an athletic leadership role.
Yeah.
You can have coaches throughout your staff all over the United States, but to put the woman, a black woman, in the ultimate power position, it took 2 Jim Crow states, 2 slave states, Charlton, to do that first.
Yeah, to do that first. I really appreciate any kind of progress that's being made on any campus or any school, and whether it's SEC or the Pac-12 Big C, I really appreciate the fact that more and more people are starting to crack that glass ceiling that Hillary Clinton talked about when she was running for office, and now Kamala Harris was vice president, and Mrs. Lee is doing her thing as athletic director. In the Deep South, it's all fair and love and war, Big C. I want to touch on some NFL, because NFL is fantastic, and when you think about it, it's so great that we don't even have the draft yet, but it almost dominates so much of the conversation in the world of sports, Big C. A major trade between the AFC powers. The Baltimore Ravens, they sent Pro Bowl offensive tackle Orlando Brown Jr. to the Kansas City Chiefs, Big C. Now, the Chiefs announced that today. The deal also gives Baltimore an additional first-round pick. Why would those two teams that are challenging for the AFC Championship game try to help each other, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, they're not challenging for the AFC Championship game, Charlton. That's the Kansas City Chiefs house. The Baltimore Ravens just hope to come by and visit, sit on the porch. They haven't kicked in the front door as of yet. But they also indicated today that they're not really trying to beat the Chiefs. When you get rid of a starting offensive tackle, which is something that the Kansas City Chiefs so desperately needed, they have an entirely rebuilt new offensive line.
Yeah.
And now that you're bringing Orlando Brown Jr., Lil Zeus, in as left offensive tackle, about 6'8", 370 pounds.
Yeah, he's a small guy.
Protect Mr. Mahomes' blind side. I mean, all it's going to be is a shadow out there on the field, casted over Mahomes, protecting him.
Yeah, he reminded me somewhat of Lincoln Kennedy that came out of the University of Washington and the Raiders when they had him in Oakland and was doing his thing. So think about the Ravens. And I know you're saying about them being only a guest in the AFC Championship game, but maybe they'll change the things with Superman Jackson. He's off fair level war. The Ravens acquired 3 picks in next week's NFL draft, a first rounder, a number 31 overall pick, and a third rounder, number 94 overall, and a fourth rounder at 136 selection, Big C, as well as a fifth round selection in 2022, per some sources. Now the Chiefs get a starting left tackle in Brown, and as you gloat about how good he can be and is, Big C, saying the Chiefs will also get Baltimore's second round pick in 2021, number 58 overall, and a sixth rounder in 2022. So what is Baltimore missing trying to give a behemoth to a team that they have to beat to try to get to the championship game? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, see, Brown didn't want to play right tackle. He is a left tackle by trade. He had to play right tackle last year because of Staley's injury, Charlton. They moved him over. But Brown is in his comfort zone playing left tackle, just like his dad did in the NFL when he played with the Cleveland Browns. He was an all-pro. But think about this. You give up a draft pick for a potential NFL start. Orlando Brown was an all-pro offensive tackle last 2 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
You got a built-in starter, a built-in impact player for the Kansas City Chiefs. So they could have had 2 first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
But you got an all-pro offensive lineman, the highly touted left tackle that everybody looks for in the NFL.
Yeah.
You give up that first-round draft pick because this guy can play today.
Yeah. No, he's like a Larry Allen also that came out of the Sonoma State in the Bay Area back in the day, did his thing for the Cowboys, Big C. So now the Chiefs, remember what happened to them last year in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes still had almost 500 yards passing, Big C, in total offense, but they were with a makeshift line. So the Chiefs will now have a completely new starting offensive line from last season's opener. And previously they signed Joe Tooney, Kyle Long, and Austin Blythe as free agents. They also expect Laurent Duvernay-Tardif and Lucas Niang back. So no matter how people thought about the game in the Super Bowl 55 last year, that Tampa had this great defense and they were just getting to Patrick Mahomes, he still had nearly 500 yards of offense, Big C, and he did it with all backup linemen, and now they've really addressed that situation coming into this season, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, see, the Kansas City Chiefs organization is not one of those teams sitting around saying, well, who's on the draft board?
Yeah.
What they did, Charlton, was went up and secured their team going into the season. They brought in players. You think about 5 starting offensive linemen. Long played with the Bears. The one gentleman you talked about was a starting center with the Rams last year. Tooney played with the Patriots. Super Bowl pedigree. You bring in Orlando Brown. Tardif has been a Super Bowl starter for the Chiefs in the past.
Yeah.
So you have 5 grown men that know how to play the NFL game.
Yeah.
That are not concerned about going out trying to make the team, positions through training camp, Charlton. They are penciled in starting positions.
Yeah.
It was Christmas today for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
When you think about what they've done this offseason as the Kansas City Chiefs, addressing their offensive line issues, and then signing Brown today with that trade,
yep,
and he's willing to play under the 5th year of his rookie contract, so it gives them cap space to go out and make some more moves. The Kansas City Chiefs have only gotten better this offseason and probably is equal as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the team they lost to in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so let me get your thoughts on something. It's a paradigm shift to what we're going to hear coming into the next week, and I can't wait to see your thoughts about the NFL draft. But what we're seeing right now is a lot like how Bill Belichick built the New England Patriots. It's a lot like how Al Davis built the Oakland Raiders back in the day. And when you look at what Kansas City just did today to make them maybe the best team again in the AFC, for the third year in a row, Big C. So many people are gloating over quarterbacks, but if a quarterback, you're not going to find any quarterback in this draft that's better than Patrick Touchdown Mahomes. And look at how difficult it was for them to move the ball when he did not have a good offensive line. So are people wasting their time trying to find a great quarterback? We saw the best the best one in the universe not having success when the offensive line wasn't there. Are they focusing too much on quarterbacks when they should be looking at linemen for the draft picks? So your thoughts?
Well, no, you're never focusing too much on quarterbacks because they're a diamond in the rough. You never know which one is going to hit. Patrick Mahomes, when he was drafted number 11 overall, when he came out of college.
Yeah.
There were other quarterbacks, Mitch Trubisky, that everybody was gloating over above him. Deshaun Watson, they were gloating over him also. Deshaun Watson has developed. Mitch Trubisky is now a backup in Buffalo.
Yeah.
This is an every-year process in the NFL. If you look out every year and they say, okay, we're going to draft 5 quarterbacks in the first round.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe 2 of those quarterbacks will be a success.
Yeah.
But you're always looking for that next franchise quarterback. Linemen generally are easier to find, Justin, because you have more depth at that position in college.
Yeah.
You always are going to be too deep. In college, your backup quarterback is your backup quarterback.
Yeah.
But a backup lineman in college can play in the NFL. But regardless of who's playing quarterback, he has to be upright for him to be successful.
It's hard to throw it. Well, not necessarily. Patrick Mahomes threw one like he was on his side, floating through the air, and he had a completion. Actually, the guy dropped it. Of course, he would have dropped it. One of the best passes that would have been in the history of a Super Bowl game. But, of course, his receiver dropped it in the biggest game in the universe. It's all fair and love of war. Before we get into the Big C pause, I want to just take some time as everybody's getting hyped about the draft coming up. And so am I. It was all virtual last year. It's going to be virtual this year, Big C. It was going to be in Las Vegas last year, but it didn't happen that way. But that's how things worked out. In the NFL, when you think about ranking the NFL's, you talk about Patrick Mahomes not being the number 1 selection when he was drafted out of Texas Tech, Big C, but ranking the best NFL 6th-round draft picks of all time. I just want to go over the top 5, and I want to bring them up, and I want to get your opinion on what you think, because everybody, sometimes they don't think past the 1st or 2nd round, Big C, but this is going back to the 6th round draft picks. Number 5, Big C, the great touchdown, John Riggins was a fullback, 1971. NFL draft number 6 overall by Kansas, Big C, through Kansas, the New York Jets, 1971 to 75. And then he ran behind the Hogs offensive line with the Washington Redskins from 1976 to 1985. How would you assess that number 6 pick, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, with us being 6 days out from the NFL draft, Charlton, when you think about the accolades of John Riggins coming off the plains out there in Kansas, hanging out with Dorothy, to being a number 1 round draft pick with the New York Jets. He was Rookie of the Year when he blazed onto the NFL scene.
Yeah.
But the most success he had in his career was with the Washington Redskins after he set out holding out for a contract extension with the Jets.
Yep.
He went and became the leader of the Hogs as a running back, Charlton.
Yeah.
Super Bowl MVP down in Pasadena, running over the Miami Dolphins, Charlton.
That's right.
And eventually ending up in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah, not bad for a number 6 NFL draft pick. So people clamor about who's going to be number 1, who's going to be number 2. I want to take you to number 4 on the list, the great Jimmy Johnson, defensive back, 1961, draft number 6 overall out of UCLA. He went to the San Francisco 49ers, 1961 to 1976, Big C. How did he turn out in your opinion, Big C? Your thoughts?
Not bad for a kid from Kingsburg, California, Charlton, and eventually NFL Hall of Famer. All-pro cornerback with the San Francisco 49ers for several years, Charlton. But ironically, he wasn't even the most famous member of his family.
No.
When you think about the most famous member of his family would have been his big brother, Rayford Johnson, who won the 1956 decathlete gold medal for the U.S. Olympic team.
Beautiful Kingsburg, California, just south of Fresno, in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley. Number 3 on that list, Big C, the great Walter Jones. He was an offensive tackle, 1997 NFL draft number 6 overall out of Florida State. Big C went to the Seattle Seahawks. Played from 1997 to 2008. Big C, how did he turn out for a number 6, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, put it this way, Sean Alexander still sends him a Christmas card every year. Sean Alexander set the single-season touchdown rushing record for the Seattle Seahawks as a running back out of University of Alabama, running behind Walter Jones, and he was a member of that Seattle Seahawks first Super Bowl team.
Yeah, the Emerald City one of their finest running backs, basically, and they've had a number of them up there. Number 2 on the list, Sammy Baugh, quarterback, defensive back, and punter. 1937 NFL draft, number 6 overall, out of TCU, Texas Christian University, drafted by the Washington Redskins. 1937, played to 1952. Big C, your thoughts?
Slinging Sammy Baugh, Charlton,
That's
maybe
right.
the greatest quarterback to ever play for the Washington football team at that time, Washington Redskins,
Yeah.
Charlton. I mean, this was the grandfather of the modern-day forward pass in the NFL. He held every early record in the NFL passing the football. And those first 4 guys that you named, Charlton,
Yeah.
are all in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah, all in the Hall of Fame. Before the Big C pause, we got number 5, John Riggins. He turned out pretty well, Big C. Number 4, Jimmy Johnson, turned out very well as well. Number 3, Walter Jones. He turned out great. And, of course, the great slinging Sammy Baugh turned out great as well, Big C. I'm going to take you to number 1 before we come up on the Big C pause. Everybody has their opinion. What tastes better, Kool-Aid or orange juice, or sometimes red wine or moonshine? Everybody has their opinion, Big C. But number 1, maybe the best running back in the history of the NFL universe. You think about the great Jim Brown, running back and fullback, 1957 draft, number 6 overall, out of Syracuse University by the Cleveland Browns, 1957 to 1965. And the only thing that made the great Jim Brown retire was having the chance to do a love scene with Raquel Welch. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the name Jim Brown speaks for itself when
Yep.
you talk about the annals of pro football.
Yep.
Played 9 seasons in the league, Charlton. 8 times led the league in rushing. You think about this.
Yeah.
This guy gained all the yards you could possibly gain.
Yep.
Never got hurt. Never missed a game.
Yeah.
Averaged 105 yards a game, Charlton. 105.
Yeah.
To get to 1,000 yards in the NFL, Charlton, in a season now,
Yeah.
all you got to do is average 63 yards a game and you will rush for 1,000.
Yeah.
Jim Brown averaged 105 yards a game over his 9-year career
Yeah.
and led the league in scoring 6 of those 9 years, Charlton.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the epitome of a running back in the NFL and everybody wants to lavish about everybody that they see on a highlight reel,
Yeah.
YouTube Jim Brown if you ever want to see the greatest running back in the NFL history.
Yeah, I think one of his best plays was there was a commercial for the Super Bowl. They had the immaculate, reception with Franco Harris. They had Barry Sanders. They had, Jim Brown. They had Terry Bradshaw, a lot of good old boys. Jerry Rice was in there, and that's one of the greatest things. Just seeing him act in movies. I've seen him act in so many movies as a young boy. Really appreciate how talented the great Jim Brown is. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when I come back, I want to ask you about 4 teams that now own multiple 2021 first-round picks. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow, and I really do appreciate the growth of Big C Sports. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. I love the fact that Jim Brown, as an athlete, before his time too, Big C, now everybody wants to get into acting once they get finished with their playing days or they want to get into broadcast. And I think about Jim Brown going into the movies, Big C, and just being excellent at everything he's done. And I really appreciate the career that he's had and what he's done even after the days of playing football. But I want to go to the NFL's, the 4 teams. I want to get your thoughts, Big C. The 4 teams that now, they own multiple 2021 first-round picks. We just finished talking about some of the guys that went in the 6th round, Big C, and some of them good old boys in the Hall of Fame. So when you think about it, the Jacksonville Jaguars, for one, and I think they got 1 and 25, so they got multiple picks for the upcoming draft. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's for certain that they're going to take Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And everybody says he's the best prospect potentially to ever come out at quarterback. But I ask all those experts and preponderance, would you give up Trevor Lawrence for Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I think that's probably yes, Big Z. And Patrick Mahomes, they just figured out that he needed better offensive linemen, not more people to gloat over how good he could be. But I wish everybody nothing but the best. There's another team for the 2021 first round that get 2 picks. You know, sometimes you take 2 cookies instead of 1, Big Z. The New York Jets, they get a number 2 and a number 23 selection. Big Z, your thoughts?
You know, but how many times has the Jets got
every
this
year,
wrong, Charlton, regardless of how
every
many
year,
picks
yeah.
that they have?
Yeah.
Every time the Jets have had, you know, a top pick. The last one that anybody can remember was your buddy Sam Darnold out of USC.
He had model.
They gave him a Samsonite suitcase and told him to get out of town.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you look around at the Jets, you expect for the Jets to make a mistake when they draft. And their name is synonymous, whatever they do.
Yeah.
Just in the season soon.
Yeah, just in the season soon. They did show a little bit of promise last year. Saleh's in town, but we got to see if things will change. I think they kind of took for granted what Mark Sanchez did. He got to the AFC Championship games back-to-back, and they said that wasn't good enough, and it's been all downhill since, it seems, Big C. Another team that I really thought was going to make the playoffs last year. I think Brian Flores is doing his thing. This year, they look to be in even better shape. I don't know what they're going to do in the draft, Big C, but the Dolphins, they are, in my opinion, really poised to make a playoff run because they get a number 6 and a number 18 selection, so they don't have to wait till we get down to number 30, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, they don't, Charlton. This is a team that's primed for winning right now. They need to acquire a quarterback, you know, before they go into training camp. But I think that the Dolphins, with what Brian Flores has done in his past 2 drafts, Charlton, will be very solid. I know they'll pick a big-time receiver, you know, in the draft that's going to really help them out, and they will get a key linebacker also in the first round.
Yeah, they're going to get a key linebacker. But give me your thoughts again, Big C, because Tua Tagovailoa, he was everybody's what we have now in Trevor Lawrence because what he did coming off the bench at Alabama threw a touchdown pass. They won a championship game over Georgia, I believe. He filled in for Jalen Hurts, and then he got hurt again the next season. And then coming into the NFL, there are times when he looked great, and there's times that he looked like the kid that got hurt at Alabama. I know he had the same kind of praise that Trevor Lawrence has now, maybe even the same kind of praise that Justin Fields has right now. Give me your feeling on what you think is going to happen with the great Tua Tagovailoa, and is it going to be long-term plans for Brian Flores and the Miami Dolphins, in your opinion, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, like I said, the Dolphins will bring another quarterback in before training camp, Charlton, because Tua is not the answer down in Miami. You know, he did not live up to expectations. He was smaller than what everybody expected him once they saw him on the NFL field. Plus, he lacked mobility.
Yeah.
And so the potential of him having a long-term NFL career is not there.
Yeah, I wish him the best, but sometimes you got to believe what your eyeballs tell you. And now, when you think about another team that has 2 selections in the first round, the Baltimore Ravens, number 27 and number 31. I mean, it's one thing to have selections in college, Big C. Give me your feeling on how they're going to figure it out. Your thoughts?
Well, this is another team, Charlton, that needs a wide receiver, a big play wide receiver, as well as needing a pass rusher. They lost Judon to free agency.
That's
He's
right.
gone. We know that they're going to be okay on the offensive line, but they need some more explosive weapons. They got Marquise Hollywood Brown, but he's a smaller, diminutive receiver, Charlton. They need a big guy on the outside that can help stretch the field.
Yeah, not that many Julio Jones in this year's draft. Even the guys coming out of Alabama, you know, sometimes they kind of light in the backside, Big C. You're a 175-pound receiver. You might win the Heisman Trophy in college, Big C, but when you get it by 230-pound Mel Blount-type defensive back, Big C, sometimes you might change how much you're willing to go over the middle. It's all
He's
fair enough.
just as big as that kid Jackson that played at Cal and was with Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, and I'm trying to remember who he signed with.
He's with the Rams now. Yeah, he's with the Rams now.
You know, he's just as big as he is.
Yeah, but Jackson's a different breed. I mean, we'll see. Jackson's also one of those diminutive-type receivers, Big C. Billy White, Shoe Johnson's all fair 11 war. The Rams, the Seahawks, the Texans, and the Chiefs, Big C, they do not currently have a number 1 draft pick. And I think the Seahawks and the Chiefs don't really care, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't think any of those teams care, Charlton, about a number one draft pick. When you look at what teams really need to do, you need plug-in and play players. I mean, the draft is always a crapshoot. You might as well just go to Vegas and hang out with the Raiders if you think you're going to win all the time through the draft.
Yeah.
You know, you need guys that you can line up and smash face with right off the bat.
Yeah.
I would always, if I was dealing with a team, I'd be looking at free agents out there, Charlton, that are desperate to play, who want to play, instead of worrying about some rookie who you're stuck with for 4 years. I mean, think about Tennessee last year. They drafted a kid in the first round. He played 4 downs. They cut him. They didn't cut him. They traded him to the Dolphins.
Yeah.
They cut him 5 days later.
Yeah,
and he was the number one draft pick. Even though he's guaranteed that money, he won't be playing in the NFL ever again.
Why do you think, and it's just a question, do you think based on the 2 major leagues in the United States that everybody really loves all around the world, NFL football and NBA basketball, when a kid's coming out of college, people put a lot of hope and stock that this kid out of college is going to be a franchise player, whether it's quarterback, running back, and sometimes even defensive lineman. In college basketball, you don't really have that much. I mean, Zion Williamson was the last biggest hope that came out of college, and he's doing okay for his team down in New Orleans, came out of Duke Big C. Do you think they put more of an emphasis on coming out of college football, changing an organization, than coming out of college basketball? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I regardless of which one, whether it's football or basketball, Charlton, it's about maturity. Is what the key is. I mean, in basketball, when you're drafting these 19-year-old kids and expecting them to be the face of the league, Charlton, there's too much pressure on them. You got kids that can't even go into the bar with their teammates, but they end up in the strip club anyway. But, you know, when you don't have the proper tutelage and you don't have the maturity level in basketball that you have in football, you have to spend at least 3 years in college to be able to be drafted by the NFL. In basketball, it's one and done. Basically 6 months in college because you don't go to class that second half of the year, Charlton. All you're doing is practicing basketball. But it's the maturity factors that makes the difference. When you look at guys in the NBA that are having the ultimate success, Charlton, long term, they generally spend more than 1 year in college.
There's a great movie that I wanted people to watch. They've probably seen it about 2 decades ago, produced by the great Spike Lee, called He Got Game, featuring Ray Allen as Jesus Shuttleworth, the great Denzel Washington, a lot of other athletes in there. The great, I think Rick Fox was in there, a couple of other great players that were in that movie called He Got Game. It talked about what a lot of young college kids need to know before they decide to leave college and get into the world where you got a family to take care of. It's all family, love, and war. And speaking of that, I want to ask you some thoughts about college football, because we talk so much about NFL football, but they all come from college, like a lot of guys looking to get drafted next week, Big C. So some college football news, while continuing to reiterate its support for the current 4-team format, College Football Playoff Management Committee this week will present, think about this, they're presented with the possibilities for future expansion. Chris Ault started all this back in 1978 at the University of Nevada, Big C. And think about this, future expansion including options ranging from 6 to 16 teams, and the CFP announced that today after 2 days of virtual meetings. I know some people don't like that, especially you guys in the SEC, because you're already going to get at least 1, sometimes 2 teams in. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I guess the major reason I'm opposed to this scenario is because all you're doing is manipulating the college athletes. If there's no financial benefits in there for the college athletes, Charlton, why are you expanding this and only the universities are getting wealthy out of it?
And I agree with that sentiment, but I also hope that they're going to find a way to just get some annuities. The same way a lot of football coaches get them, they get lifetime annuities, Big C. They can create annuities for these college kids. They don't have to make it so difficult. They don't make it difficult for the coaches to get several million. They can figure it out. So working with a group within the CFP Management Committee, which is comprised of the 10 FBS commissioners plus Notre Dame Athletic Director Jack Swarbrick, Big C, discussed some 63 possibilities for a change. And change is good, according to a news release from the CFP. Those include models of 6, 8, 10, 12, and 16 teams, each with a different variety of scenarios. I think COVID made people realize we can't be stuck in the mud like the days of old, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you can't be stuck in the mud, Charlton, but you also have to think about the health of the student athletes. I mean, everybody's after a money grab. But
Yeah.
nobody's talking about the long-term health of these student athletes. Say you're a number one prospect, Charlton,
Yeah.
of being drafted in the NFL, and you got to play 2 extra games in college, and also in that third extra game, Charlton, that you played, you blow out your knee. You went from a number one draft pick, Charlton, making guaranteed millions of dollars, to now potentially being a free agent or even a 7th-round draft pick, where your career is spectacle at that time. It's skeptical.
Yeah.
So why are you putting all the onus on the student athletes that they have to take the risk? These coaches are not going to take the risk. The athletics directors are not going to take the risk. I go back years ago. University of Miami was playing at a game, and I think it was down in the Fiesta Bowl. They had this great running back, Willis McGahee.
Yeah.
They got beat by Penn State. He got his knee blown out, Charlton.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who was rated the top running back in the draft coming out.
Yeah.
But he got his knee blew out in that bowl game.
Yeah. I know it's a subject where they got to ask the players if they want to play. But for the guys that are going to get drafted, sometimes they hold out anyway, Big C. A lot of guys have done that with Ohio State and other teams over the years.
So if you got players holding out and you're going to have a watered-down product, what's the reason for expanding? Say you get 8 teams in, Charlton.
Yeah.
And out of those 8 teams, 5 of them have 10% of their players started to know. I'm not going to take the risk because I've been projected as a 1st or 2nd-round draft pick.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more valuable than having that ring, saying that I potentially, and you're not guaranteed, only one of those 8 teams are going to get it.
Yep.
And potentially you might get that ring.
Yeah, it's all fair and level war, Big C. There's a lot of debate about if they should or if they should not. It's going to still be a part of the discussion. Bill Hancock, CFP Executive Director, said there will be no new format this season or next season, even if the board decides to alter the format. It may not well occur until after the current agreement expires, which is going to be, I believe, after the 2025 season. No matter what they do, they play more games at Division II, and they're going to figure out how they can get more money. I just hope they figure out how to get more money for these college kids as well. I want to touch on one more subject for college, and the same thing we talk about for college when it comes to women. College volleyball, Big C. Not that many people may have paid attention compared to basketball, but it's NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament 2021, Texas versus Kentucky, and a battle of power settlers, Big C. In the number 4 Texas Longhorns, they're 27-1 on the season. Number 2 Kentucky, they're 23-1. They're going to meet in the NCAA Women's Volleyball Championship match on Saturday. The Wildcats advance to their first final with a 4-set victory against Washington out of the Pac-12 in the first semifinal, while the Longhorns would make their 7th finals appearance and first since 2016 after they knocked off Wisconsin. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, I would love to see these young ladies that play college volleyball in a dunk contest. I mean, I am so amazed every time I see the athleticism of these young ladies, the height that they can get that vertical on, Charlton.
Yep.
And the acrobatics that they play on the floor with when they're diving down for digs and saving balls. It's just magnificent. And it's a shame that we don't get a chance, as the broadcast networks do not do these young ladies in prime time, Charlton, to show the great athleticism that they possess.
Yeah, oftentimes they get kind of brushed aside, and they just get kind of the back news. But I love just bringing up the championship opportunities for women in the world of volleyball also. Speaking of people that can jump high, Big C, I want to bounce the ball over to the NBA because it really is fantastic. When you think about Giannis Antetokounmpo, Big C, he dropped 27 points. He's been on the mend lately, Big C, but he dropped 27 points. Chris Middleton dropped 24, and the Milwaukee Bucks, they defeated at least what a lot of people thought, including myself, as the best team in the Eastern Conference, but they've been dropping a couple games lately. They fell to the Warriors, they fell to the Suns, and then they fall again to Milwaukee, Big C. They defeated the Philadelphia 76ers 124-117 on Thursday night in a matchup of 2 of the Eastern Conference's top teams. And when you think about Bobby Portis, he added a season-high 23 points, and the Bucks ended at a 5-game home losing streak. The great Joel Embiid had 24 points for the 76ers, and Shake Milton had 20 off the bench. Do you feel, is it a big deal that Philly's dropped 3 in a row, Big C, or is it just more than meets the eye, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, see, this is why power rankings don't matter based on how you say that Philly is the best team in the East. If power rankings were the thing, then Philly would have dominated. But I think that right now, you talked about how much Patrick Ewing used to sweat on the floor. I think that Joel Embiid has tried that many years in the last 3 games, the way they did getting wiped across the floor, Charlton.
Yeah, it's all fair level war. You know he's going to be the NBA's MVP or maybe runner-up. It's all fair level war. But, you know, people kept talking about how Giannis was so dominant over the last couple of seasons, but it never got them to a final. We'll see if Philly can open that door this year. Also, the great Kemba Walker matched a season high, dropping 32 points, and the Boston Celtics rolled to a 99-86 victory over the Phoenix Suns on Thursday night. They got a new kid in town. They're going to be matched up with the Brooklyn Nets tonight, Big C. We'll see what happens in that game. And even if Brooklyn decides to show up, I know that game's already underway. But Walker was 11-17 from the field, hitting 5 3-pointers, Big C. The Celtics, they were without the great Jason Brown. Jaylen Brown didn't play because of a sore left shoulder. And then the great Jason Tatum, he struggled. In fact, he's been struggling since he had that shootout contest with Steph Curry, Big C, where he dropped 44 points. But in his second straight game, he was only 3 for 17, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, just a couple of weeks ago, you were asking, was Brad Stevens the guy at the Celtics, Charlton? Evidently, he came out there with a bucket of Lucky Charms and threw them down in those
I like Lucky Charms.
Good spot, and then walked all over those Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I like Lucky Charms, Big C. In fact, I sometimes I eat my Lucky Charms, and if I run out of milk, I'll even eat them with water because they taste that good. Big C, you ever do that with water and Lucky Charms, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, Charlton, no cereal's good enough for me to eat water. They should have gave some to the Suns last night. A little water to get them hydrated. They were dried up from those eat those Lucky Charms.
Yeah, you know, they burn marshmallows when the sun's too hot, Big C. It's all fair level war. But think about this, 15 points and 11 rebounds. And then the Celtics, they're 32-27, led by 21 points in the second half. And the Celtics, they've won 9 of their last 11, but they are playing against the Nets tonight. But sometimes when guys don't play, you can't really get a measure on how good the Celtics are or even how good the Nets are, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you got to play the starting five that you put out there on the floor every night, Charlton. I mean, the NBA is not an excuse league.
Yeah.
It's about shut up and dribble, as everybody says in the media. You have to go out there and play. That's what you're paid to do.
Yeah.
If you're using the excuses, this guy's hurt and this guy's hurt, what do you do when you lose in the playoffs? What excuse you use at that point?
Yeah, well, I think for guys like LeBron, it makes a difference. Also, Anthony Davis, I'll talk about him in a bit. But Chris Paul had 22 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Devin Booker finished with 15 points. So their production was down, and you don't get that every night, but the production was down. Is it a check-engine light coming on or just one of those days, Big C? Your thoughts?
I mean, Chris Paul had his normal night. When you look at Chris Paul flying under the radar, I know he should be in the top 5 of the MVP race in the NBA this year when you look at the turnaround that this team has made down in Phoenix, and that's a la Chris Paul.
Yeah.
His leadership role as far as points and assists every night. He's not going to get you 30 on a night-by-night basis, but he can get you 20 and 11, Charlton, to help lead your team. Yeah,
I really like the great Chris Paul. He did his thing, but they came a little bit short sometimes. It happens when the heat's turned up too high. The great Luka Doncic, Big C, dropping 30 points, leading the Mavericks to a 115-110 victory over the LA Lakers on a Thursday night. Anthony Davis came back after missing 30 games with a right calf and a heel issue. It's the longest absence of his 8-time All-Stars career, and you can't really count on him all the time, no matter what the reason is. But he got to give you more than 4 points if you're going to put him in the game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is a guy that's never played an entire season in his NBA career, so when has he ever been able to count on it? He got very fortunate last year when he knocked down that shot against Denver, which stemmed the tide in that playoff series in the bubble, Charlton. But Anthony Davis, when you talk about a heel and calf, what sits between the heel and calf? I don't know if you know anything about anatomy. It's called the Achilles tendon, okay?
Yeah.
So he has an Achilles tendon problem.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be a little leery about going 100% when he's out there on the floor. So will that hinder or help the Lakers?
I think you've already seen it's going to hinder the Lakers, Big C. No guy that has that kind of contract. They all saw what happened to Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant had to miss a whole season when he blew out his Achilles when they were playing. He was playing for Golden State against the Toronto Raptors, Big C. Had to miss a whole year, and now he's back, but he's also not dependable because he's also not trying to hurt himself just so someone can cheer his name, if that makes sense. But playing for the first time nearly 10 weeks, Davis scored 4 points on 2 of 10 shooting. It will get better, If not, then stay out and get healthy. It's not the playoff game that you lost, Big C. The Mavericks, all 5 Dallas starters. I told you got to be careful when you go down to that Dallas-Fort Worth ranch where J.R. Ewing used to hang out, Big C, because sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to. Dallas starters finished in double figures, 5 of them, Big C. Josh Richardson scored 13 points, and Finney Smith and Dwight Powell dropped 10 apiece. The Mavericks were dominated in rebounding in a loss to the Lakers. Think about it this way. The second game of the season, but kept better pace this time, maybe because they're mostly healthy, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Dallas lost Kristaps Porzingis in this game, Charlton, with a knee injury, so he's going to be out sometime.
Yeah.
But when you talk about, 5 starters in double figures, you say they went down to that ranch down in Dallas where JR used to hang out. Maybe they didn't take it to the ranch, but they put a fork in the Lakers and they were done.
Yeah, they made it to somebody's ranch. That makes sense to you. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He scored a season-high 29 points. The great Dennis Schroeder dropped 25 and 13 assists. Andre Drummond had 14 points, and he was kind of reincarnated the great, Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, 19 rebounds for the Lakers, a lot more rebounds than Davis got, Big. For your thoughts?
Well, that's because they lost Kristaps Porzingis, Charlton, so he really didn't have anybody to combat with in the paint. But when you talk about Pope and the other guy at guard, having season high of 29 and 25 points in the backcourt, what's going to happen when you bring Davis and James back into the lineup, Charlton? That point production is going to be reduced. And what type of role will they play in the Lakers lineup? Will they be as enthusiastic?
Yeah, I think people got to really pay attention to what happens with Kevin Durant, because we saw him miss a whole year because people put pressure on him to come back. Tonight's NBA schedule, Friday, April 23rd, Miami at Atlanta, Boston at Brooklyn, Cleveland at Charlotte, Big C, LA Clippers at Houston, Washington is OKC, Denver's at Golden State, and Memphis is at Portland. There was a time when people were saying that Dollar Dame should be considered for MVP. But Portland, it looks like they have a little hitch in their giddy-up lately. They keep losing close games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Portland will never be a challenge as long as Dame Lillard is in there, Charlton. You can't set up your offense when you have him out on the floor. He's your point guard, and he doesn't average double digits in assists. But here's a guy that will launch a three-point shot from 35 to 45 feet, Charlton. Yeah. And that takes the rest of the team out of their rhythm offensively.
Yeah, I agree. And I love Dollar Dame's game. But you're not in an all-star game. You're trying to win team basketball. And I've learned that from Steph Curry. When he's shooting like that, his team is always in a position to win. That's just my opinion. That's why he has his 3 championships. But you got to play team ball, not let me show you how far I can shoot. Because Hulu does have live sports, Big C. I want to teach a little bit on the world of Major League Baseball. And the Oakland A's are whipping everybody's behind. You would think we're playing back in the days where they had the Coliseum rocking, Big C, winning championships. But the Chicago Cubs, take me out to the ball game. The great late Harry Carey, take me out to the ball game. Would you believe the Chicago Cubs, Big C? They celebrated the 107th birthday at the great Wrigley Field in historic stadium by putting on an RBI party. Take me out to the party, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, here's a team, Charlton, that harken back to the old days. You think about a baseball facility that's been standing for 107 years as everybody now wants these
brand new nouveau riche ones,
ballparks that they're building, Charlton, with all the amenities.
Yeah.
The Cubs are playing in those old digs that are rat infested and whatever else you might find underneath the stands there at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, those rats, they may be rat infested, but those rats not bigger than the rats in New York City. I mean, I thought it was a cat. It was so big, it stared me down. Big C, it's all fair level war. And I got it on videotape. It's all fair level war. The great Jake Marshall, Big C, hammered. Think about this. He homered in a match, the career high, with 5 RBIs for the Cubs. They pounded the Milwaukee Brewers 15-2 on Friday night, Big C, for their 4th straight win. I love when the Cubs win, maybe because they have that big C on their uniform. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you think about this. Here the Cubs, they broke out with a football score that the Chicago Bears would be proud of. Yeah. They scored 15 points on offense and held the opposing team to just a safety, Charlton. But, the Cubs are one of those lovable teams that everybody appreciates when they play great baseball.
Yeah, when they play great baseball, Big C. The great Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, Willis Contreras also connected for Chicago, the Cubbies, Big C, which was coming off of a 3-game sweep of the New York Mets, and Nico Herrera, Big C, had 3 hits. in the first start of the season. 107 years in one of the most historic ballparks, I think, in all sports, Big C. It's in a neighborhood. It's not like it's downtown in some high-rise area. It's not out in the boondocks, Big C, where you got to drive 25 miles out of downtown. They put it right down where people can come outside on their balcony and watch a game. Happy birthday, 107 years. That's a long time. Big C, who blew out all the candles, Big C? Your thoughts?
You know, if you light that many candles in Wrigley Field, you'll burn the whole house down.
Yeah, they had a band back in the day called Earth, Wind, and Fire. I think it was Earth, Wind, and Fire. Or maybe it was Ohio Plays. It's called Fire. Fire! Dun, 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 dun. I remember that song back in the day, doing lots of dances to it. I know we come up on a great weekend. I know a lot of people looking forward to the fight. And, I mean, whoever wins that fight, it should be a good display of MMA fighting. The champion Cameron Usman, Big C, 18-1, maybe the best fighter ever in the UFC. Jorge Masvidal, 35-14, Jacksonville, Florida, on Saturday night in front of 15,000. There's some insiders told me there might be some shenanigans that go on. So at the same time, we don't need shenanigans, but you're in a home crowd and people are going to be boozed up, and sometimes that might allow the referee to get out of control with things. Does that concern you at all, that people, at the same time they've been away from fighting for almost a year, you ever be away from something for a year and then they let you back in and you're all boozed up? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to realize these guys are fighting in a cage, and so there's no way you can get close to them. It's not like being in a boxing ring where you got 3 layers of rope. You got this wide fence around everybody, keeping them contained like a pack of wild dogs.
Yeah, like a pack of wild dogs, and we all know what a pack of wild dogs, they need to be contained. Hopefully, anyone got any wild dogs, make sure you contain them. It's all fair, love, and war. I hope that everybody can have a great weekend. Watch a lot of good basketball, watch some good baseball. No matter what you do, have a great, safe weekend. It should be a fabulous one, Big C. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble, with all you've got to use. How can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we're 6 days away from the NFL draft, you talked about the top 6 the top 6 picks taken in the first round of all time.
Yeah.
You talked about Jim Brown being the number 1 of those number 6 draft picks.
Yep.
Jim Brown, in the final year of his NFL career, only made $66,000. So if you think about that, when they talk about signing Trevor Lawrence with the number 1 pick in the draft, and his rookie contract will be about $31 million. Jim Brown, probably the greatest football player of all time, only made $66,000 in his final year playing in the NFL. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They make as much as Jim Brown, but they keep everybody healthy.
They keep everybody healthy, and everybody stay healthy. No matter how many people they let into a fight, stay healthy, wear your mask if that makes sense to you. You can always be safe every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the number 1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number 1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, it's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.